Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, how are you doing this evening? Has anything gone horribly wrong in your life lately?
Minor thing relative to like last week, I guess.
We're not starting off with any breaking news this time.
Right? Yeah. Actually, yeah, I forgot that was as we were recording that news broke. Which, by the way, the police have not taken my car off of hold yet, so I still don't have it or any estimate on whether or not I can or will have it. Very exciting, but they did find it, I guess. But I don't have it, so. But yeah, no, I nearly apparently fried my laptop. Nearly, I did not actually fry my laptop. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So, should I just tell the story?
Yeah, you might as well. This is the fact that this keeps happening is.
Yeah. So
quit trying to take the crown from me.
So no one had commented or mentioned anything, but I did not have a post-game story for the Vikings after the game. It showed up the next morning. Well, there's a reason for that. So the day that I'm flying out to Birmingham for my friend's wedding, a couple hours before I get to the airport, I have a hearing scheduled. I mentioned that there was this legal matter that I needed to get resolved. It was the day I was flying out, right? So I have this hearing scheduled. It's supposed to last an hour. It lasts 2 hours. That part is not the problem because I had scheduled everything to the best of my ability to be enough hours apart that it could have taken 3 more hours. I'd still be able to make it to the airport in time. So that part handled. But my brain was not in a great place afterwards. It was just I can't think. I was just bzz, it was just this buzzing in my head. So I'm packing and I'm I don't know if I have everything. So I asked my roommate, hey, I travel all the time, but just give me a packing list so I can double check with myself, right? So I don't have to rely on myself to know that I've packed everything. And he went through everything, right? He's like, hey, do you have, extra pair of pants? Do you have an undershirt for, the formal wear for your wedding? Do you have, enough socks, enough underwear? And I did not have some of the things packed that he had mentioned, right? I was like, oh yeah, I should pack socks, right? It just had, my brain was just not working, right? And then he goes, I don't even have to ask this, but since you're asking, your laptop charger, your phone charger. And I was like, yeah, of course. Come on. Why would I say that?
Yeah.
Why did I do that? So I pack everything. I go to the airport. He's the one that drives me. No car. And not that I would normally drive to the airport, but normally I just take a look.
I didn't make the connection there. I appreciate that.
But he drives me, and I get to the airport, and as soon as he drives off, I'm like, wait, I didn't pack my mouse. And I didn't, by the way. And I've gotten so used to having the mouse, the touchpad is excruciating to use. And I was like, man, I can't believe that. Well, whatever. I go inside, I get through security, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pre-write some stuff, right? Just to have some stuff ready, for whenever, right? To have some stuff ready that doesn't feel rushed, if some breaking news of this kind of happens. So I take out my laptop. I take out, my keyboard because my laptop's keyboard doesn't work. Different story. And I'm like, okay, well, I will want to work on this on the plane. So I should, even though I've probably got enough power for, because it's the first flight is not that long, I should just power this up. So I go through my bag and I'm like, oh my God, I did not pack my laptop charger. Jesus Christ. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Well, I'm just going to have to rely on USB-C power the whole time because my laptop does take USB-C power. It's a little bit slower, but it's fine. I'll just have it in low power mode the whole time. I'm not going to be gaming. It's fine. So I take out my USB charger, I plug it in, Most of the time, it doesn't work with my laptop, but for whatever reason, it worked this time. Fantastic. Except it doesn't really. It says it works, and it doesn't, and the power's going down. I wonder why. And so I plugged that into my phone, and it turns out, oh, the chairs, because now a bunch of these airport chairs have like plugs in them, right? These chairs were not plugged into the wall, so there's no power. So my laptop detected something in the USB-C port and was like, hey, yeah, you're powered. That's great. Or like some capacitor of the charger was just draining and the laptop detected that. Either way, it wasn't powering, right? So I was like, okay, whatever. And so I take out my battery bank and I just plug the USB-C into that, right? Like I'm like prepared, right? So that's working. My laptop is fine. It's charging exactly at the rate it needs to. I write it up. And I put it all together, and I put my laptop away, and I board the plane. And now I've got a layover, right? I've got a layover in Atlanta. So I'm like, okay, I could just do a little bit more work, or I could watch a YouTube video. Who cares, right? So I pull out my laptop, and I look for my phone charger, and I realize, oh, I left the wall wart in the airport. So I don't have the phone charger. I just have the portable. So the only thing I have for this weekend for my phone and my laptop is this battery bank. And it is beefy, right? It is a really, really good battery bank. It can charge a laptop, right? And it's got a ton of capacity. But like this is 4 or 5 days, right? So I'm just like, oh, I'm screwed. Okay, fine, whatever. I will go to Amazon and I'll like rush ship a USB-C thing for my phone and a replacement Lenovo charger for my laptop, and I'll have it shipped to the Airbnb. It's fine. It's going to cost me money. That sucks, but that's fine. Okay, cool. I'll do that. And I'll have enough power for tonight to do all the things I need to do. And the next morning when it arrives, I'll be fine. Okay, cool. I do that. And so I use the rest of my battery bank because Amazon is like, yeah, this is going to arrive at 7 a.m. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, Amazon, I agree that it's wonderful. I'm glad that you said that. So, and like both of them, and I got like an even better like USB-C charger that it's got like fast charging 2.0. I'm so excited about this. And the Lenovo charger is lighter than the one I have at home, but it has the same wattage and capacity, and it's from Lenovo. Fantastic. This is perfect for traveling. I'll just have an extra one. Okay, cool. So that morning, Amazon is like, hey, your Lenovo charger arrived. Your USB-C is going to be a little bit later today. Okay. So I go down and there's like no package there. And I'm like, there's no way someone stole my Lenovo. It just showed up like an hour ago. Like there's no way someone stole it from the front porch. That's insane. And so I'm like going through all my Amazon, like I'm like, what are my options here? Did you send me a picture of where you put it? No. And I'm just like going, like I'm trying to like figure out like the options on Amazon, and I'm telling Amazon it never arrived, and Amazon is like, yeah, we can't do anything about that until Monday. It hasn't officially not arrived until Monday. And I'm just like, but you told me it arrived and it hasn't. So it has officially not arrived. Like, what does that mean? And they're like, yeah, very often Amazon will say that a package has been delivered before it's delivered. And I was like, no, that's not true. Every time you've told me a package has been delivered, it has actually been. What is this?
Like, what? Why are you... quit gaslighting me, customer service. I know what's going on here.
Great. And like, I'm really confident that this is like in AI customer service too. And I'm just like, no way has your automation had deal with this problem often enough for you. That's crazy. And they're like, did you get a photo? I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, it might not have arrived yet. I'm like, And then while I'm having this conversation with them, the USB-C charger shifts during the conversation. It changes from arriving later today to arriving on Monday. I fly out Monday night, right? That's not useful to me at all. There's a bunch of football games on Sunday. Like famously, that's what happens on Sunday, right? Like that's the thing for Sunday. And I will not have an ability to watch the game or write about it. Okay, this is like kind of an emergency. Okay, I'll Uber to Target. I'll see if they have a universal power adapter, or if I'm really lucky, a Lenovo one. And I'll get a USB-C charger from there. Okay, fantastic. I'll do that. It's going to be really expensive, but here's the thing. You can return items that you bought at Target to any Target. So I'm just going to use it for the weekend, fly home, return them to Target. Great. Phenomenal plan, Arif. This is really well thought out. You'll only be out on the price of the Uber. No Targets in the city of Birmingham. I have to go to a suburb. I'm like, okay, this is a pretty expensive Uber. Crap. And so I'm like, well, what are the other department stores? There are no department stores in Birmingham. Like there's like general stores that call themselves department stores, but there's no like Target or I don't know, like Macy's or JCPenney or anything that has like an electronics department. So I'm like, okay, well, are there Best Buys or there are electronic stores? No, there aren't. Not anywhere in downtown Birmingham. There's this one electronic store that like it's clearly like, you know, self-starting, you start your own business, entrepreneurship type thing. And normally I wouldn't care about that or even notice it, except for the fact that they clearly only sell one product. Like it's a brick and mortar store to sell one product. It calls itself an electronics store. It in fact sells luggage with a phone stand in it so that you can film TikToks or whatever, right? You can like film the holder is also a phone stand is the thing. It calls itself an electronics store.
And that's not helpful to you?
Not what I need at the moment.
Oh.
Not specifically within my realm of need. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll go all the way down the suburbs. I go to this Target. I buy their universal charger. The guy's like, you're in luck, man. Normally we just don't have these. This arrived this morning and people are always trying to buy it. You're in luck. Fantastic. And it's like, okay, well, USB-C charger. And he's like, okay, well, we've got a 10 watt or we've got the 90 watt Mac charger. I'm like, there's no way there's the two USB chargers. You're kidding me, right? And he's like, no, that's it. Okay, well, I'm going to return these anyway. So I'll just give me the MacBook charger or whatever. I do that. I go all the way back. I plug the universal charger in. It's got a little Lenovo plug, right? So I just put that tip in. I plug it in, and the laptop boots up, and it says, hey, you know, this is not a Lenovo charger, and it's underpowered. It's only 90 watts. Are you sure you want to use this? I'm like, yeah. What's wrong? So it says press any key. I'm like, okay. I press one of the keys, and it just like turns off. Just off, right? And I'm like, oh. Did it run out of battery? Like, what's happening? Okay. And like the charging light's not on. I'm like, okay, this sucks. Great. So I plug the MacBook in. I put the USB-C into my laptop. No charging. Oh my God, it's not working with my laptop. Okay, well, I'll just plug it into the battery bank, charge that, and then plug the battery bank into the laptop because I know that works. It doesn't work. It's just not working. I'm like, oh my God, whatever. So I go into the Norse Code Discord and this guy's like, you might have fried your laptop because like it could be like dirty power, like the universal power charger may not have it may not be able to clean up the power, right? Like the Lenovo one does. And so like you might not be able to charge your phone. I'm like, oh, great crap. Well, I can't worry about that now. So I try to charge my phone and it is just the slowest. It's a 90 watt charger. It's the slowest charger my phone has ever used. It's crazy. And it's like, okay, I should have realized that Apple would lock the fast charging of their 90 watt charger to Apple devices. Why didn't I think of that? Not that I had a choice. So I'm like freaking out. Sunday morning, the Lenovo one arrives and I haven't been able to use my laptop all week. I'm like tweaking, right? Like I am an addict for being able to use a computer, right? And my phone has been hovering on 5 to 15% the whole weekend because the Mac charger is just, it's not very enthusiastic about charging my phone. It's just not its bag, right? And so I am just like freaking out. The wedding was on Saturday. Beautiful wedding, wonderful. Chase, congratulations. And I met a lot of cool people. But like, and so Sunday, Sunday morning, I did London game. Got to watch that. And I get a notification. Good news. Your Lenovo charger actually arrived today instead of Monday. Isn't that great? I'm like, it should have. It's supposed to arrive Thursday. And they're like, yeah, we even put it in the Amazon locker, so we know 100% for sure that it's arrived. And I'm like, I already understood 100% for sure arrived to mean something. But okay, it's in the Amazon locker. Where's that? Okay, it's a block away. That's weird. Just you said you're going to deliver it to me. Fine, whatever. I go and get it. It works. My computer works. It charges. My computer's not fried. It works just as much as before. And then the USB-C charger arrived later that Sunday. And it is faster than any charger I've ever used. So fantastic. So that's what happened. But my laptop, I could barely watch the game. I was watching on my phone, right? So I couldn't write about the game. And I got like a huge headache, either from all of what's happening here or, there's like mold in the Airbnb. I don't know, right? So even though I had watched the game and I kind of had access to my laptop, sort of, I just couldn't write anything. So that's why it came out Monday morning. That was my weekend.
Mine was
And then
normal.
I went to the Civil Rights Museum, and it was closed.
Well, that's just an allegory for everything at this point.
Yeah.
Welcome to this episode of Norse Code.
Oh, this is a football podcast.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Oof, boy.
Sometimes
Wow.
we talk about stolen cars. Sometimes we give eulogies. It's just kind of what we do around here this time of year. Welcome to this episode. Maybe things will calm down. Maybe some football discussion will kind of calm down, especially about the Vikings, a normally predictable team.
Oh yeah, I mean a calm, rational team that hasn't had any news of import impact their outlook or anything.
No, we should be fine. Welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hope you guys are doing better than Arif. I think I'm just going to start off with that. If you enjoy the show and would like to donate to the show, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can go over to norsecode.threadless.com. I'm going to do things in opposite order this time. norsecode.threadless.com and get a baby onesie, get a t-shirt, get a shower curtain. Those are always nice around the holidays. It is, speaking of which, it is getting close to Christmas, and the wreath merchandise is absolutely there waiting for you. So take a look at that over at norsecode.threadless.com. You can also go to paypal.me/norsecode as well if you'd like to give a one-time donation over to the show. That's always very much appreciated. Or you can go over to patreon.com/norsecode and be one of the cool people over there who got a bonus episode instead of the regular episode that we would have put out on Friday. This bonus episode does in fact include a famous conversation with the police in all of its glory. I even included a timestamp in the description for you to find it. It is
Yeah, I want to listen to that too. I don't know what it sounds like on your end.
All I censored was the stuff that could get Arif swatted. Everything else is in there.
Yeah. Which not speaking of swatting, speaking of the police thing, nothing to do with the hearing that I mentioned earlier in the episode. That is like a completely independent story that I'm never going to tell you that has made my life worse.
Just think of this, folks. This is what he's already telling you. And he's saying he's not willing to talk more about something else. So that's cool. So you can be one of the cool kids over at patreon.com/norsecode who got a bonus episode. People are also getting access to the Discord and all of that. Special thank you to a couple of different people. Henry Bergstrom, thank you so much for signing up. Matt, thank you so much. Evan C., thank you for signing up. And Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat.
Oh,
Literally how what was written down in Patreon. That's Skimbleshanks, the Railway Cat, and Dan. Thank you guys so much
and Dan
for subscribing over on Patreon.
Thanks, Skimbleshanks. Also Dan.
And Dan. Let's not forget Dan. Dan is important here. Let's get into it, and we happen to be recording on the Tuesday. So that means that we get to talk about...
We get all the Tuesday news.
We get all the Tuesday news, which normally there is none, but today there is some. And it's about the Aaron Rodgers debate. No, it's Jefferson. Justin Jefferson.
I forgot about that.
This day has been swallowed up by so many things. Justin Jefferson's going on IR. He tweaked his hamstring. Not a lot has been said publicly about it, other than he is now going to miss, for sure, the next 4 games. And Adam Schefter tweeted out what was clearly a message from Justin Jefferson's agent, which was weird.
Yes.
But at the same time, there was a moment of like dunking on the Bears that I feel like we all can appreciate from Adam Schefter. So that was nice.
Okay, yeah, that was funny that like for no reason at all he mentioned.
Oh,
that.
absolutely. No reason whatsoever. He just jumped down from Mount Olympus and went boom, and we were done. Justin Jefferson.
That was the end of that chapter.
Yeah, that was the end of that. So Jefferson's going on IR. Not much more is available to be said. Other than
different Jefferson was traded today.
Yes. not the one of the Justin variety, but
still a receiver.
But yeah, so I'm not going to be using the word tank on this show because like every other question we got in today was about it. We're not talking about tanking. Not because I don't believe in it, but
it's just every question. Yeah,
it's every question.
And one of you tried to trick me in the bonus content, and I saw through your trick.
Yeah. So we talked about something else. Jefferson going down. We could just avoid talking about this altogether and just like talk about how Justice Mosqueda is really going through it right now with the Packers.
Yeah, I guess he saw the worst throw of Jordan Love's career, followed 50 minutes later by the second worst throw.
They were so bad. That linebacker was just sitting there going, really? All right.
That throw was so to that linebacker that had I been there as the linebacker, I would have briefly, for just a moment, wondered which team I was on. Like, am I running a route? What's going on?
I haven't been on offense since Pee Wee. What the hell?
Yeah, what's going on?
Is this a thing? Is this what we're doing? Like,
it was bad.
Yeah, that was borderline atrocious.
The good news is that the Packers' woes seem to be long-term, as opposed to the Vikings' woes, which are persistent, but it's a new one every time.
Yeah. Or, as Bill Barnwell was writing today, it seems like they're playing the same game every week.
Yeah, it's like, that Kevin Clark tweet, the Seahawks have never played a normal game?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Vikings play the same not normal game every time.
Yeah, as it turns out. So Jefferson's going on IR. Let's just discuss it briefly. The Vikings are not looking great for the next few weeks. But at least we play Chicago.
Right, yeah. So the good news is they play Chicago. The bad news is that they play San Francisco right after that. And I would say normally, like, I don't really have much of a shot of beating San Francisco either way, but the Vikings have a way of playing up to the competition in the same way that they have a way of playing down to their competition, right? So it would have been nice to have Jefferson for a game like that because, he's a matchup, like it helps. So right now, the Vikings are still favored by 2.5 points over the Bears. It tells you a lot about the Bears, given the Vikings injury, and are 7-point dogs to the 49ers, which seems generous, but fine. Yeah, sure. Why not? Mind you, even though he's the most important non-quarterback on the team, non-quarterbacks just don't tend to swing outcomes that much, especially on betting markets. If you looked at like wins above replacement, Justin Jefferson last year had 0.71 wins above replacement over the course of 17 games. That might seem very low. It is, right? It's not a ton. But if you take the average quarterback, an average, whatever, like a Derek Carr, his wins above replacement per game is about 0.08, right? And so Justin Jefferson's wins above replacement is about a little bit over 0.04, right? If you take the other 25 players that contribute that are not a quarterback, their wins above replacement on average, right, are 0.02, right? So Justin Jefferson is about 2.5 times more important than the average non-quarterback. And that actually does make a little bit of sense. But in the context of like how much a game swings, like it doesn't move markets that much. Now, if we move away from like the numbers and the Excel spreadsheets, like this is like catastrophic, right? Like, you only lose, 0.045 or something like that, 0.05. This is catastrophic, I think, against a team as good as the 49ers. Now, after that, right, they play the Falcons and the Packers, and those are two below average teams, but teams that are playing a little bit better than I would have expected to at the beginning of the year, in part because of my disrespect for Jordan Love. With that, and the Falcons defense is like pretty good, right? And so that will give us kind of an understanding of if the Vikings have any capacity at all to tread water, right, without Jefferson, and also kind of gives us an understanding of what kind of team they are, just generally speaking. Now, Kevin Seifert, and it sounded like from the beat in general, a couple of others seem to suggest that this is a little bit worse than just a 4-week injury. That, even though he was put on designated to return, and they do expect him to return this season, it may not necessarily be those first 4 weeks. It may extend into week 5, week 6. And that's just because of the nature of the hamstring and because they don't want to rush him back at all. They don't see a ton of value in having him play at, say, 70%, right? Which I would argue that like a 70% Justin Jefferson is better than like a 100% Brandon Powell, who I have no qualms with. He's played pretty well given what he's been asked to do for the Vikings. But he's like wide receiver 4. He'll be wide receiver 5 when Jalen Naylor returns, if he ever returns, right? So, yeah, but that seems to be their approach. And then also, obviously, there is the chance of re-injury if he plays when he's not fully recovered. So, okay, fine. The way that they talk about it makes it seem like it's a little bit longer than 4 weeks. Luckily, after the Falcons game, it's like, well, I think it's the Saints, the Broncos, and the Bears again. Like, holy crap. If you were going to pick a time in the schedule to not have Justin Jefferson, right, it would be that. And then it's the bye, right? It would be that, right? Like, oh, for the Bears and then the Broncos twice, or for the Bears twice and then the Broncos once. Like, yeah, absolutely. The 2 worst teams in the league. Fantastic. Let's do it. So yeah, there's that. And of course, if they can't beat both the Packers and the Falcons, I mean, then that's it, right? So they're probably not going to beat the 49ers. They're probably going to beat the Bears. But if they lose to 2 below average teams, right, that is probably it for the Viking season. In the meantime, the Athletics, so both Alec Lewis and Jake Seeley, their fantasy writer, have suggested that based off of the patterns of play when Justin Jefferson's not on the field, and also based off of like Alec Lewis's read of the team in general, KJ Osborne is going to, quote unquote, fill that role. A lot of people got upset with that, and of course, Osborne has been underperforming this year, so I get it. But that is not to suggest that he will get the targets Jefferson would have otherwise gotten, right? It is to suggest that he will line up at the X receiver position instead of the flanker or the slot. So he's going to be the one that takes on press coverage because he's lined up on the line of scrimmage, as opposed to the flanker or the slot, which are off the line of scrimmage and don't have to deal with press coverage, right? And that still allows Addison to do what he does best. We saw last week against the Chiefs that he still does pretty well in against press, but I still wouldn't want him there all the time. But it frees him up to do the stuff that he still like is the best at. And so you've got Osborne running from the X position, but I don't think he's going to be running the same routes because I think the offense is designed around freeing up that X position, freeing up Justin Jefferson by running complementary routes, like having TJ Hawkinson run underneath and having Jefferson running a post over a dig or something like that. And it wouldn't make sense to do that with KJ Osborne, right? So I think that while he'll play those snaps, I think that they'll have TJ Hawkinson move a little bit further downfield on his routes. I think they'll have Addison play obviously a lot more, but specifically in ways that move him a little bit deeper downfield. I think the downfield threats will be more likely Hawkinson and Addison. And Hawkinson has not been a downfield threat for the Vikings, but as something that he can do and just not something the Vikings have done with him because the offense is designed around freeing up Jefferson for those more valuable targets. So I think that that's going to change. We're going to see more Josh Oliver and more 2 tight end sets in general. We're probably going to see a little bit more CJ Ham, which is great. But I think that that's how the offense is probably going to change based off of my read. So I wouldn't read too much into KJ Osborne as taking his role. Like he will probably play 100% of the snaps like Jefferson does when he's healthy, but he's not going to absorb the target share that Jefferson is. So I think that's kind of the way to read that.
Yeah. The only person who's going to get all those targets now is going to be Johnny Munt, and that's we just have to accept that. Yeah, that's how that goes. Well, let's talk about the Chiefs game. Then there's a lot to talk about. This was a game that it felt like one of those games where the Chiefs got bored and let the other team like stay in it. It felt to me a bit like that. This was a game where the Vikings defense was showing up, but getting burned by one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league. Um, where do you even start other than Justin Jefferson went out, and this did not spell complete doom for the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, I think like kind of that, given that Kelsey was healthy for most of the game and returned to the game, um, the Vikings defense, I think, showed out. Like it did a pretty good job given the circumstances. This is like, again, like, so the Vikings defense, like consistently, like when I watch them play, at least for the past couple of weeks, like not against the Buccaneers, but for the last couple of weeks, I'm watching them play and I'm just like, hey, this is like a lot better than I thought it would be. Like this defense is like doing stuff. And then like I check the numbers after the game and it's like, yeah, they give up like 3.4 points per drive. That'd be the worst in the league. And be like that, but that doesn't feel right. That's not right.
Nothing about the offensive play and stats and defensive play and stats really makes sense.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened in this game. And there were like moments where, like, I think the no look quick shovel near the goal line near the end of the game, I think it was Pacheco, as he's like preparing to scramble, was just like, yeah, well, what are you gonna do about that? It's just like, that's Patrick Mahomes, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I thought they did well. It helps that the Chiefs like don't really have a receiving core, so. But yeah, I thought the defense like mostly did all right. Again, some concerns about Byron Murphy, the Vikings spent a lot of money on. And Caleb Evans went out for a little bit. And so that's not great. But Mekhi Blackmon availed himself pretty well. Like that was really nice to see. Cameron Bynum is continuing to have a very, very, very good season. Marcus Davenport is showing up as somebody who can help create pressure. Daniil Hunter had, an impact. So, we had a little bit of that going on, which was nice. But like, like it didn't do a ton in the end. The Chiefs still scored a high number of points per drive, and it wasn't entirely driven by the turnover thing. Would have been nice, of course, if the Vikings had generated some turnovers, didn't drop a pick or two that Mahomes uncharacteristically threw. I should say uncharacteristic for his career. This year he's been off.
This year has definitely been much more of the year of, well, that seemed to have gone off in a different direction.
Yeah, exactly. So it would have been nice to take advantage of that. That didn't happen. And obviously, given that it was a pretty close game, that could have been the difference, right? So, yeah. Overall, given kind of the relative expectations of this defense, mostly happy with it. Again, like this is not like, the defense is like fixed or anything like that. It's going to take some time, but hey, you got that going for you.
Yeah. Defense didn't look bad. Here's the line from Warren Ludford, I believe it was yesterday morning, said the Vikings are 1-4, but the offensive line now has the second best PFF grade in pass blocking and are first in run blocking. How? Nothing about this team makes a lick of sense this year. And the fact that we started off the game literally first play with a fumble, like, you can't write this. People would read the story and just close the book and be, no, we're done here.
Yeah, and it was like, of course it was like the signing that like you had to bend over backwards to justify. I'm not saying it was a bad signing, Josh Oliver, but I'm just saying like it's the one where like people didn't get it at the outset. So it's one where you're kind of primed to not like it if things go wrong, and a thing went wrong. He's also like the fourth highest graded tight end right now by PFF. Like his blocking has been, according to them, absolutely stellar. I think it's been good. I don't know if I'd go there, but like they think that his blocking has been stellar, and I'm sure the Vikings are kind of on board with that because they do keep on giving him snaps. But the stuff that you see is the stuff that you pay attention to, and it started the game off with a fumble. I don't know. The Vikings like bookended this game in ways that are just so quintessentially like the Vikings that you can't help but just, kind of hand it to them. Like, yeah, that's great. You started the game off with a fumble, and it was so obvious that I didn't actually think you would do it, and you did it. That's incredible.
How do you start? It'd be like starting an Avengers movie with absolute nothing but teasing a character and like death. Like, or just a sky beam. You start off the Avengers movie with a sky beam. Like we're just skipping right to the end. We're skipping
we're just
to the
going
hits.
right there. Yeah,
right to the hits. Come on, first play. Okay, so the Vikings weren't out. The run game got going, kind of. Kirk Cousins, I believe it was immediately after they got the ball back. He manages to drop the ball, manages to fumble, recovers it himself, and completes a pass. But I'm just like, the fact that it was only 2 fumbles this game is remarkable. I kept waiting for more. This team just wants to give you more in the way of fumbles.
They're addicted to fumbles.
I don't get
it. There's no way around it. They're addicted to fumbles.
It's absolutely remarkable. Okay, so I'm getting exhausted trying to explain some of these games now, because just watching them is so exhausting, but in a different way than last year. Last year it was exhausting because it was, they were winning, but it was like a tossing and turning. It was like one of those bad nights of sleep you get after way too much like spicy food, and you're just like, you wake up in the morning, it feels like you didn't sleep. All you did was just have this, awful nightmare that you were sitting and watching the whole time. The Vikings last year were your sleep paralysis demon. This year it's just like bad. Like it and I recognize this is the team we could have had last year if everything kept going wrong instead of going right like it did last year, but I'm clearly frustrated. Let's talk about the end of the game, because
that'll resolve your frustration.
That'll make me feel better. This is the one way that we can make James feel better is by talking about the end of the game. There's 3 things in particular I want to bring up as far as how the game ended and what role it played in how the Vikings lost. The first thing I want to mention are the multiple instances of picking up the flags and the pass interference that wasn't.
Yeah, so the throw to Jordan Addison, wasn't accurate, first of all. So, that's kind of hard to gauge because, if movement is restricted, like how do you tell where the ball was supposed to go relative to the receiver? But in that case, the defensive back clearly put his hands on the receiver and was holding onto his pads. And the question is, does that constitute pass interference? Now, personally, I don't think that's a bad no call. I don't think that is unusual for the game for that level of contact and that lack of restriction. And you could even go as far as to say Addison should have exaggerated his movements to suggest that he was being held, right? Which, maybe, sure, whatever. If it helps you win, do it. But I don't think that it's a bad no call. I do think it sucks to have a flag go out there and then have it be picked up, because that to me is something where it's like, I probably wouldn't call that. I would say that's 60-40, not pass interference. But once you throw the flag, it's just like, now we've got an expectation. And obviously, if you're a Chiefs fan, you're happy that the flag was picked up. And if you're a Vikings fan, you're upset. But, if they had never thrown the flag, I don't think Vikings fans would have been like, hey, that's PI. I can't believe they didn't throw that. They would just be like, yeah, okay, I guess. Get off of coverage a little bit better. We didn't have Justin Jefferson for the last, drive, so fine. The issue was the fact that a flag was thrown in the first place, less so than what happened. I think most people, outside of this context, seeing something similar would not call that pass interference. So that's whatever, but it's just like they invite that kind of controversy. The thing that happened next, I think, is like a lot more infuriating, even though it wouldn't have that much of an impact on the game, which is, of course, that the guy took his helmet off to talk to the refs, right? Which is the second thing on your list. But that is like
infuriating. Why?
Yeah.
How? Kevin O'Connell
explicitly
even pointing
against
it out.
the rules. And sometimes I want to remind people that very often the ref's job is not just to call a penalty. Their job is to essentially manage the game. And so very often they'll do stuff like tell a receiver that they're not lined up correctly before the snap. and so the receiver will adjust. And that happens a lot, actually. And when people notice that, they get like really upset, right? They're just like, man, I can't believe you just call balls and strikes. What are you doing? Their job is to like manage the game, right? Because if they don't do stuff like that, then there's tons of penalties that like really make the flow of the game worse. And this happens kind of all the time. Like if a quarterback false starts, which is like, it doesn't happen very often, but like Rodgers used to do this thing where he would move his hands. And then they like changed a rule that would make that a false start. And once he started doing that again, they didn't call it right away, but a ref would like tell him like, hey, if you keep doing that, we're going to throw the flag. And that's fine because that tends to be universally applied, right? In this case, the ref tells the player to put his helmet back on, which is crazy. And the thing is, you can see a bunch of former NFL players freak out on Twitter. So that tells you right away that this is not what I just described. This is not an instance of, hey, the ref is kind of nudging you to tell you, because if you don't do it, you'll get a flag. And they're managing it. No, that's just a flag. That's illegal. It's against the rules. You can't do it. That's a flag. And a bunch of players were like, what is happening? I can't believe you did that. And obviously Kevin O'Connell is like losing his mind. And the thing is, this did not have a huge impact because all what happened was that the Chiefs would start further back. And I believe on that drive, they did end up punting. So the Vikings would have a different field position. If they had a different field position, maybe they call a couple of different plays. Maybe they don't feel like the type of Hail Mary that they, like it changes things, right? But like that is not a huge impact as much as like a PI, right? So there's that. Yeah. And like also none of this matters if the Vikings like have, so this isn't the third thing. We'll talk about that in a second. But if the Vikings like have timeouts, right? Like, and like one timeout was wasted on, in my opinion, a bad challenge, right? Kevin O'Connell said after the game that in that circumstance, he would call that challenge again because, it's not clear that Travis Kelce made a football move in securing the catch, right? And so then, in that case, so for people who don't remember, a throw to Travis Kelce, Josh Metellus makes an amazing play, first of all, to try and disrupt the pass by getting his arm exactly where you need to, where it's not pass interference. It's interfering with like the catch process itself, which is fantastic. It's like how you're coached to do it. Kelce is like kind of holding onto the ball. It's really difficult, but he pulls it down as he's going to the ground. His back is on the ground, and like Metellus essentially rips the ball out and starts running, and the refs they blow it dead, which that does bother me. Like just like let it play out, man. Like, what are you doing? But they blow it dead, and they ruled it. They ruled it a catch, right? And so O'Connell throws the flag. And to me, it's a bad challenge, right? Like, I understand like the technical argument that like, he didn't make a football move and he hadn't like secured the ball. And so, the ball is still not in his possession when he's on the ground. And so when it appears in Josh Metellus's possession, that ends up making it an interception, right? Which would have obviously been like huge, but I think it's a bad challenge. And then the other two times seem to be related to like a helmet issue or a communication issue. They just like couldn't get lined up. And so they kept on like, I say kept on, it happened twice. They essentially took delay of game penalties because they just couldn't do it. And it's like, did you learn nothing from the previous week? Like, have a plan in place for when it is not entirely clear what the call is. Like, just Cousins, just call a play. Just call a play. Like, just do it. Like, you've been playing quarterback for a decade. Like, you know what to do here, right? Just like, O'Connell is a better play caller than you. We both agree on that. Not the issue at the moment. But so the Vikings don't have any timeouts as they end the game. So that's another thing.
We did get a question, and I'm just going to skip to this part of the mailbag because I feel like it's important. Brandon Powell Doctrine asks, why didn't KOC park his timeouts in the garage? I feel like they were stolen here.
They weren't stolen. He threw them away. It's different.
It was incredibly, incredibly annoying and frustrating. not to the point of breaking a TV. That's Eric Thompson's deal, but frustrating all the same.
That's so funny.
So, in case you hadn't heard, a friend of the show, Eric Thompson,
which we don't have on the show enough, by the way.
Yeah.
He keeps on complaining, and he's right.
Eric Thompson threw his hat in disgust at during the challenge, and like it hit the little ball of it at the very top of the hat hit just perfectly. Also, it's a Harrison Smith hat, so he should have known it was going to hit harder.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, he threw the Hitman hat. Yeah, that's on him.
So it hit the TV, and it absolutely broke it. It's just this big line up it, and he's all making fun of himself on Twitter over it. So I sent him a link to the TV I just bought the other a couple weeks ago, and I sent him a link to some nice thick plexiglass as well. Because he had mentioned how much he had paid for it. And I was like, oh, well, I got this for cheaper, and you can spend the rest on plexiglass. And like, it's like half an inch thick. It's like,
so it should be able to withstand a Harrison Smith hat.
One would think, but
can't be sure.
You can never be sure until you try it. I think that ends up having to be like something he tries to do at some point. Throw the hat at as hard as he can at the plexiglass. So the other problem with the final drive was that Kirk Cousins took a sack on the final play. Like,
yeah, I don't know like how much of that is on him, right? Because he's holding onto the ball a lot, so it feels like, hey man, there's some pressure. But it's like it's a Hail Mary. You gotta wait until the receivers are far enough downfield. I think it's entirely on Ed Ingram.
The best defensive player on the Vikings, let's be honest. What? Like, Cousins can't take the sack there. Like, the offensive line has to hold. This offensive line, who apparently are
it's one of the best in
the second best PFF grade in pass blocking, like, they have to hold up. And for the most part, the line did. Save for one player.
One player, one time. Kind of an important time.
He might be a spy. Like, can we just accept the possibility that he may be a double agent for playing for somebody? Like, this is truly remarkable. How can you be this bad and still play? So
the reason that PFF did not give him a bad grade for the game. So he got, as a pass blocking grade, a 71.5, which is still in the green for them, right? He gave up, according to them, 3 pressures, which is not good, right? 1 sack. We all know which one. And I believe the reason would be because it was a long play. It was over 2.5 seconds. And so it's just very difficult to downgrade an offensive lineman on a play where you have to pass block for over 2.5 seconds. But it should be noted, all 4 other players held up on their assignments. And I do want to give the Chiefs credit here, because on Hail Marys, teams tend to only rush 3. And here the Chiefs rushed 5, and they performed a stunt. So they had performed a 3-player stunt, and they blitzed from deep, right? So they clearly were committed to rushing the passer on a Hail Mary, which you just don't see very often. And I would like to see more of, and the Chiefs did it, and it worked. They got a sack. Final play of the game. Good for them. But yeah, you just can't get beat on that. Like, I know that that's true on every play for offensive linemen, so it's not like a useful coaching point, but that is such an enormous situation to lose in. And it is, I think, his fault, right? Now the job is to hold up longer than 2.5 seconds. I don't care if it's unreasonable. All your friends did it. Why can't you? That's very frustrating. Ingram has played better the last 2 games. I will say that. He's played better the last 2 games than he did the first 3 games. But that is so frustrating. That's so much that not that the Vikings had an enormous chance in that situation anyway. Again, especially without Justin Jefferson, and an injured TJ Hawkinson, which is not an excuse, right? The Travis Kelce was playing on one leg, right? So it's not like that, but it's just you have such little margin for error that when it does show up, when the team does put itself in a situation where it has the ability to respond, right, to tie the game, or I don't know if they go for 2, win it, that seeing that kind of mistake from a player who often makes that kind of mistake it's just. But yeah, the rest of them held up. Like O'Neal pushed a guy through the arc, so he wasn't in there. Darrisaw held up really well. Cleveland held up really well. Garrett Bradbury, who had just gotten back from the medical. Well, I shouldn't say just gotten back. He like missed one snap, but like who was injured earlier in the game held up. And again, it was person on person. It was like a 5-person pass rush. So they all did their jobs for over 2.5 seconds. There was like a nice little pocket for Cousins. It wouldn't help if Cousins like threw the ball away because it's the last play of the game. But like, if he had run around a little bit, maybe that would have helped. I don't know that he can outrun Mike Dana, but maybe that would. But mostly it's an Ed Ingram thing.
It's truly remarkable. Truly, truly remarkable. I'm just getting bitter. I'd like to see his replacement out there at some point, and I know many people would as well. And I feel like the signing was to shut fans up, and now it's just like we have him on the team, we're just never going to play him.
I mean, that is kind of funny.
That's
a good move.
Game respects game. Like, okay, fine. You're going to complain online about it. Fine, we'll do it. We're just you happy now? Great. But he's not going to start. We know something more than you do about this, and we're just gonna take it. There's not really much else to tell about. The end of the game was really the story of how this all worked, and I don't go into the belief of the refs have it in for somebody, or the refs are paid off, or there's some like conspiracy. My conspiracy theories live and die with Melissa and Avril Lavigne. They have nothing to do with the NFL. However, the picking up of the flags was really just, you didn't help yourself. You absolutely didn't help yourself with that. KJ Osborne missed a play. Kirk said he was too early. I mean, what do you got? I'm just getting tired and frustrated about the same thing every week. That the fumbles are the reason why the Vikings end up losing, or you get frustrated. But the takeaway is that the Vikings played well against a likely deep playoff team. Like, you've got that, even when Justin Jefferson wasn't playing.
Yeah, and that's what I wrote my piece about, right? It's a good loss. It feels bad because there's so much to be upset about. But like, there's only so many good losses that you can take before you're just like, well, I'd like a bad win, right? Like,
we had tons of those last year.
Yeah, I now that I'm on the other side of it, I would rather be complaining that the team isn't good enough to win as many games as they're winning than be bad, than be good enough to not be losing as many games as they're losing, Like, that sucks way more. And I know that. A bunch of people were telling me that last year, and I agree. My job wasn't to say, doesn't this feel good? My job was to say, hey, let's take a look at this team objectively. And yeah, take a look at this team objectively. This Vikings team. So if you eliminate the turnover plays, which I understand, like, that sounds like, aside from that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln, right? Like, I get it, right? But in order to put into context how good this team is on most plays, if you get rid of the turnover plays, the Vikings are 7th in the NFL in net EPA. 7th, right? They are ahead of the Chiefs, right? And that's if you get rid of turnovers for everybody, not just the Vikings. So, like, there's something to be said about this. And, like, again, like, half the turnovers are just like turnovers that, like, don't make sense. They're not like turnover worthy plays from Cousins. It's like that ball hit TJ Hawkinson or KJ Osborne in the hands. That Josh Oliver fumble. What's going on with that? Hey, why can't the Vikings recover any fumbles? What's up with that? Right? Like, there is something to be said. First of all, when you're projecting a team out to see how a team will do going forward, as much as people hate it, PFF grade does predict future wins better than almost any statistic. But a very good statistic is net EPA. And an even better statistic is net EPA without turnovers, right? That tells you more about the team than if you include turnovers. Now, you can find some way to include turnovers to make it more powerful a model than either of the two. So I'm not saying you just get rid of it entirely. It's just that turnovers have a huge impact on EPA, right? And a small impact on our ability to predict what's going to happen in the future. But like the Vikings are running out of runway, right? They have to lift off. The plane's going to crash. Like you don't have any more time to pretend to be good. And it's good that you have the ability to keep it within one score of the Eagles, to keep it within one score of the Chiefs. That's fantastic. But now you got to win, right? Like, and the Buccaneers are better than I thought they'd be, right? So, that's not a bad loss. That's just like an okay loss. But like you got to win. And even if the Vikings are actually the sixth best team in the NFL, which I don't believe. Like I think DVOA has them 14th. ESPN's Football Power Index has them 12th. So there's teeth to this idea that the Vikings are better than their record, right? Like every kind of ability to measure this would suggest as much. But like, let's say the Vikings are the third best team in the NFL, right? They're 1-4, and for whatever reason, they got screwed or whatever, right? They're the third best team in the NFL. Even if that's true, at 1-4, your odds of making the playoffs are pretty low. You just don't have wiggle room, right? So the Vikings can lose 3, maybe 4 games, right? For the rest of the season from here on out. And they've got San Francisco on the schedule. They've got the Lions twice on the schedule. And the Lions right now are just a better team. And so you can have good losses against like the Chiefs and the Eagles. But like you're going to need to either steal a win from one of those two teams, one of those 3 games, or you're going to have to be perfect in every game you're supposed to quote unquote win, right? That you're supposed to win, right? So the Packers twice, the Bears twice, the Saints, the Falcons, all of them, right? The Broncos, which, if it wasn't the Vikings, I'd say I'm not worried about it, but it's the Vikings, so I'm worried about it. But like, yeah, this is a good team, kinda, but that's where you're at.
It feels a bit like that guy who goes and like plays blackjack at the bar and like just like has an amazing night, just an absolutely perfect night, and say, "Wow, this is great. I bet I can do this every time." And then he shows up like a couple days later thinking he's gonna do it, and he's like gone back to the ATM for the 3rd time now. No, dude, you got lucky once. You just enjoy the fact that you had a good time last time, and not. You should never go back. You should never go to the ATM more than once, but don't go to the ATM. Your night's done. Just walk away. I'm tired. I'm tired of this team this year. It's, if not for the fact that our kicker is apparently having a career year, just like by not missing anything this year.
That never goes sideways.
No, never. You can always count on kicking, as it turns out famously. Always count on kicking. Well, let's go into the mailbag because we have a lot of existential questions in here, such as from Drunken Vike, who asks, "Is this how the Kirk Cousins era ends? Not with a bang, but with a whimper." I feel like it was always going to end with a whimper.
Yeah, that was my response. Yeah. Why wouldn't it end with a whimper?
Yeah.
That's what you signed up for.
You knew what this was several years ago when he came into town. He's very successful. He does what he does, and he will get you to a certain point. That's where he's at.
That's it.
Yeah. Then he has moments of brilliance. He has moments of what the hell are you doing? And he fumbles a lot. That's
that's where you are.
That is Kirk Cousins, and you go with it. Eric Miller asks, trade, extend, or ride out players on expiring contracts. Kirk, Hunter, Cleveland, Davenport, Hicks, and Osborne. This is kind of like the MFK thing, but
right, yeah. So trade, extend, or ride out. So what I would do, or what the Vikings would do. So what I would do with this list is trade Kirk, extend Hunter, ride out Cleveland, extend Davenport, but not very long, ride out Hicks, ride out Osborne.
Because
So there's only
Osborne
like
just got like a 4-year deal.
oh, that's right. Yeah. Did he? Okay.
Yeah, I just looked that up earlier today.
Well, then he doesn't count on the expiring contracts list.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, and then what the Vikings will do is ride out Kirk, attempt to extend Hunter, but ride out Hunter. Um, ride out Cleveland, ride out Davenport, ride out Hicks, and then Osborne again, I guess doesn't count. So yeah. The only person that will try to extend out of that list is probably Hunter, maybe Davenport, depending on how later the season goes. But yeah, not much to discuss.
As you were talking there, my only thought was, I'm just envisioning Harrison Smith. Can you imagine him playing for another team outside of Minnesota?
I mean, I couldn't for Thielen, and then I did pretty easily. So, yeah, that would be very weird. It's like, I'm trying to imagine the uniforms, aside from like the obvious disgusting uniforms like the Packers, I'm trying to imagine the uniforms that give me the most dissonance. And like the Steelers one for some reason, like that one like really bothers me a lot.
I did have the yellow and black in my mind for Steelers.
Yeah.
I was trying to envision him in a Seahawks jersey, and I couldn't.
Yeah, that one's weird. For some reason, I could do it in an Arizona Cardinals jersey. I wouldn't wish that for him.
No.
But that one doesn't bother me as much. Same with the Patriots. Panthers is really weird, even though we just saw a couple of Vikings go there. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. I'd say that's in the middle of the two. Dolphins is very weird.
Oh,
Jets
Dolphins
is super weird.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Jets.
Yeah.
He finally
Bengals
gets to play.
Is pretty weird.
He finally gets to play with a quarterback who loves him, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Ravens I could see. I guess that's also purple, so maybe that's not fair.
Yeah, that's and there's
but also like, they signed Eric Weddle and it just feels right.
Bengals?
It's a little weird to me.
Bengals and Browns don't look right.
Yeah.
And then you got
Chargers maybe.
Then you look at Texas teams and
the Cowboys is way wrong.
Cowboys is wrong. Texans I could see.
Yeah, I could see the Texans. It's like in the middle for me between like that's weird and that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Chargers I could kind of see. 49ers is very weird to me.
Definitely
Raiders
not 49ers.
works.
Raiders
seems to work for me.
Raiders would work. Saints I would rather vomit blood.
Yeah.
All right, so Nude Egg asks.
Get that out of the way.
Yeah. Now that we did some cosplaying for.
I was thinking, Photoshop jersey swaps, but in our mind.
Yeah, that. Nude Egg asks, is there any validity to the complaint that the Chiefs benefit from favorable refereeing? Is there any way to evaluate if a superstar player or teams receive differential treatment? I am skeptical that there's anything intentional. There's been a long, people joke about Aaron Rodgers specifically and how certain quarterbacks get certain calls, especially in the realm of PI. Is that something that is statistically trackable? What do you think?
I don't know how trackable it is because you'd have to have a good baseline for what calls they're supposed to get because each quarterback has a different playing style and a different offensive line. So the number of hits that they'll take is different, right? And so it'll change, how many calls they'll get. So I mean that one's a bit tough. In my experience, there's some for star quarterbacks a little bit, and I think it's unconscious. I'm also skeptical. I don't know that the Chiefs are it though. First of all, they got 10 penalties in this game, so that one's it's a difficult week to make that argument. They did miss the hands to the face against CJ Ham on that on the same play that was the PI. That should have been called, but I don't know how often that happens in the trenches. So maybe that only gets called once every so often, even though it happens a lot more. It might be one of those situations, but yeah. The only moment where it seemed egregious was the helmet thing, which is crazy. I haven't actually seen an NFL statement on that. So I don't know what that's about. If the NFL, because by now usually the NFL makes a statement if they think that a call was wrong or something. Not that they often find themselves in the wrong, but But yeah, I don't think that there's anything that suggests that the Chiefs are historic beneficiaries of the calls. I can kind of believe the Packers and maybe like because for a long time I was just like, this is just Vikings fans just complaining. And even when you're like, okay, the way the Packers like the offensive line plays, it feels like holding, but it's secretly not. Um, it still feels like it for the Packers. I don't know if that's true without Aaron Rodgers though. So I guess we'll see kind of going forward. But for the most part, I don't think that there's anything that suggests that the Chiefs get favorable called more often.
Next question is from the pessimistic Minnesota sports fan, who asks, for the Ed Ingram is elite corner.
Good Lord.
It has already been established that Ed Ingram is one of the top defensive talents in the league. Given that his play on the final play of the game resulted in a sack that clinched victory for the Chiefs, is it too soon to start talking about Defensive Player of the Year conversations?
So in this conversation that we had, which is a couple of weeks ago, right? I think it was right after he caused the fumble, right?
Yes.
It was explicitly plays where he sacked somebody, not plays where he allowed a sack. So that's important. So in this game, he did not sack anybody, if I remember correctly. So I don't know that we can count that as part of his Defensive Player of the Year resume, but certainly I will be keeping track for voting purposes going forward.
Important to just keep in mind.
Right. Yeah.
Jack Rackham asks, with Jefferson being out at least 4 games, is there potentially a window to resume negotiations with his team? Seems like it could be a sign of good faith from the team, given he's injured for an undisclosed amount of time.
So the thing that like holds negotiations on pause during the season has like very little to do with the amount of attention the player himself can devote to it. His agent and the Vikings front office are exactly as busy as they were last week. I mean, the agent might be a little bit more busy. He's like crafting tweets for Adam Schefter about the injury, but allegedly. But like, for the most part, there's like not a huge change. People talk about like, oh, I don't want to like cause a distraction during the season or whatever. But like the agent can like negotiate without that's what the whole point of the agent is, right? So I don't know that this necessarily changes things, but I think the point that the Vikings could, as like a gesture of good faith, reopen negotiations. I think that kind of makes sense. I don't know that it would be received super well, just because if the Vikings guarantee offer is still fairly low, that would seem like an insult. But yeah, maybe. But I don't think that this is going to necessarily change that, because I think all the reasons that they would delay negotiations, maybe that the agent is focused on other clients during the season, or that the Vikings just don't have the bandwidth to handle like negotiation conversations as they're handling the scouting department and working players out and, going through the trade market every week, whatever, right? Like, I don't think that whatever the reasons were, those reasons are still there, because I don't think Jefferson is all that involved in the negotiations like most players.
Yeah. Next question is from Cody, who asks, for a Reeves, Lewis Seen, and Andrew Booth Jr. optimism corner, at what point do the Vikings start giving extended opportunities to their younger players? Is there a threshold of losses?
I think I think you have to be mathematically out of the playoffs before you even have that conversation. Like, I think as fans, it's very easy for us to be like, yeah, I mean, there's only a 5% chance. Like, teams that are 1-4 only make the playoffs like 1 in every 20 times or whatever, right? That doesn't matter to like a football team. Like, for the most part, like teams don't check out until there's like a reason to check out, right? And like that's just not how most football teams operate. And even then, even when teams are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, they'll still like play their starters. They'll still like do all that stuff, because 3 years from now, you will be judged on your winning record, right? You will be judged as a coach. You would just be judged on your record, right? And so, as you go up to negotiations, it's better to say that like you're a 42-32 coach, with like 10 of your losses occurring in year 1 or whatever. Then, it's better to say that than a I'm doing the math in my head, right? Uh, a 38 and 38. Did I do that right? Whatever. Coach, you get what I'm saying, right? Because if you accumulate more losses later on or earlier on, even though nothing has really changed about your coaching ability, that's just like part of your negotiations. The same is true of these players, right? They want to play as well as possible, even though the playoffs are gone, because they have contract incentives to meet that year and contract negotiations to win in the future. And so coaches know that like losses that occur in previous seasons that don't matter will end for that season will end up mattering when they go back to ownership and they're like, hey, you know, I'm a 600 coach. You always re-up 600 coaches versus I'm a 580 coach. You usually re-up 580 coaches. Like those are different conversations. So I don't think that happens too much. But if you do have like a long-term assurance, like Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell basically do, it would make a little bit of sense to attempt to try out younger players. I don't know that I'm going to Lewis Cine or Andrew Booth first. They very much seem like they're so buried on the depth chart that they have done enough to demonstrate that they have not like proven that they've earned it. But like Ty Chandler, maybe, right? I'd give him a little bit of run because like, what have you got to lose? I would maybe give some of the rotational defensive linemen a little bit of time. Like as in like Jaquelin Roy, who played pretty well in like his 4 or 5 snaps. And give him a little bit more run and stuff like that. But yeah, I wouldn't be, drastic about it. Plus there's just like not a lot of players in the Vikings team that like really fit that definition right now.
Next question is going to be from Kenneth Allen, who asks, independently of how likely or unlikely they are to trade for him, which potential team do you think would maximize Cousins' skill this year and produce the best overall result? Obviously, they wouldn't do it, but I still see the draw of Cousins in a Shanahan offense.
Yeah, I think that like if we ignore kind of who's currently the quarterback, right? So San Francisco, for example, they're just going to stick with Brock Purdy. That's probably the team I'd go with because Cousins does a very good job of like, painting inside the lines that a skilled offensive coordinator can do a lot to maximize that. Cousins still holds onto the ball a little bit longer than your Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy types, although like Purdy is a very weird example of like quarterback that holds onto the ball too long or not very long. Like it's just like he's like 2 different players. It's a very weird quarterback situation with him. But for the most part, like, yeah, he fits that style of offense very well. It doesn't require a ton of improvisation or anything like that. So that's probably the team, given their supporting cast, the offensive line, how good, that running game is, how often they call play action, what that play design looks like, all of that, right? That's probably the best team, especially because he's not going to be asked to carry the burden given how good that defense is. That is also what you thought about like the 2018 Vikings when he signed, but whatever. The offensive line wasn't where the San Francisco offensive line is. The Chiefs would probably be an example of a team that has a great supporting cast that would not be fantastic for Cousins, despite being West Coasty in some ways, just because of how much they rely on the quarterback run and how much they rely a little bit on the creativity to connect with people like A.J. Brown on a scramble. I would imagine that in general, an Andy Reid environment would be good for him. I would not put him on the current Chiefs because of how much it relies on the chemistry between Mahomes and Kelsey, how much that offensive line has degraded a little bit, how bad that receiving core is. But, you pair him with Andy Reid, you probably get great results. Same thing with the Miami Dolphins. I'm sure that would work wonderful for him, even though it requires a little bit more of a deep ball than we're used to seeing from him, because he does throw a good deep ball and does throw it fairly often, and I think he'd be comfortable uncorking it in a Mike McDaniel offense. And then I think that of teams that could use a quarterback, I think the best fit is probably Atlanta. That's a Shanahan-style offense, with Arthur Smith. They've got a fairly good receiving core with like Kyle Pitts and Drake London. That running game is really stellar. That offensive line is pretty good. And the play calling is something he's familiar with. They love play action. They'd run the quarterback a little bit less, but Arthur Smith already knows how to run that kind of offense, like with Ryan Tannehill. That's probably a pretty good fit for a team that does need a quarterback. But teams that don't need quarterbacks probably Miami and San Francisco. I would not put him in Cincinnati. I'm thinking of other Shanahan guys. I not put him in Cincinnati because of how bad that offensive line is.
The big rumor keeps popping up as the Jets because they want something to make the Jets relevant this year. The media does. I just don't. I couldn't imagine him wanting to go somewhere for a couple of weeks and then not be able to play again next year. Like that wouldn't work. That's not something he would desire to be a part of. B, it's not like the Jets have anything they could use to trade for him.
Like, yeah, that's like one that I don't get. Like,
why does this?
First of all, like Cousins loves to be the guy, and he wouldn't be the guy, right? Because Rodgers is always kind of looming in the background. Also, the Jets don't have like the cap space to extend him, and he wants an extension. So why would he do that? But also, like, yeah, what are you trading? Like, are you trading an asset that the Jets might need next year, like Garrett Wilson? No.
Yeah.
Why would they do that? They're trying to win games.
Yeah. The Jets gambled and lost hard. They were the first people to like get knocked out of the Hold'em tournament. They're out. Like I don't know how to like make this any more clear to some part of like national media. Cousins isn't going to the Jets.
And like impossible. He's in full control, right? Because he gets to like quarterbacks are almost always in control. I want to like make that point that whether or not there's a no trade clause in their contract, like a quarterback can just say, I don't want to go there, and that's usually like enough. But like, also he has a no trade clause. Why would he go to a team that's not going to commit to him long term? That's crazy.
It'd be different if it was like right before the trade deadline, and the Chargers are on an absolute roll, and all of a sudden Herbert goes down, and like it would be like he'd be a perfect fit in that offense for some reason. It'd be like, I'm trying to get a ring, whatever, like you're trying to make something work, but like there's nothing possible here. They have nothing to trade with. He's not going to go. He's not going to be the number one guy. They already have a number one guy. He's just hurt and talking on podcasts. Like there's no reason why it would be possible. However, Zach Dixon has an interesting idea. He says, is the concept of a, quote, loaner possible in the NFL? The idea that you can have, say, Darisaw for the rest of the year for a third, and we get him back next year. I don't mind this, but the injury thing is where it would be difficult.
Yeah, so this happens all the time in soccer. If you've got like a talented player that can't crack your lineup, you'll loan him out to a club that maybe plays at a lower division or plays in another league to give him the kind of experience so that he continues his development. Or if you've got like this incredible player and he's in your long-term plans, but you don't really have a lot going for you at the moment and you're cash poor, you can retain his rights but loan him out to a league in a higher division or something like that. That's a thing that happens in soccer. It's like not a thing that happens in the NFL, and because soccer's a lot more plug and play, it's not really the same thing. You kind of want to continue your development with the current offensive line and the current offensive line coach, and you don't want him to learn multiple terminologies and then come back and then all that. So already trades are pretty rare in the NFL compared to other leagues. This would, I think, make it all of the reasons that it's pretty unlikely, like even more the case. And then, like you said, because injury is such a concern. And by the way, in a lot of soccer loans, unless it's like specified in some way, the club does have the right to recall that loan. Like if they've got like an injury, they can recall that player to so if like, hey, you loan out your striker or whatever, and because you've got two great strikers and a great backup, but like one or two of them get injured, you can recall the loan, unless like some of the terms of the loan prevent that from happening. And loans can happen for half a season or a full season or whatever, right? I think with like, given the injury thing, you don't want him to go to another club, see a bunch of other doctors, then get injured. I think that's part of it too. It would be kind of cool if the NFL contract structure maybe allowed it, but generally speaking, you'd have to negotiate with the NFLPA, and they'd pretty much say no, because like you don't want players to have to uproot their lives for just a year for no reason if they don't have to. So yeah, unless like the NFL would organize a bonus, but that would mean increasing player salaries, and they would never do that. So
Yeah, it'd need like a relegation league for that to like be a possible thing.
yeah, if you could like loan out Jaron Hall, like that'd be cool.
Logan Bull Sharif asks, question for Arif's Bad Takes Corner. Couple weeks ago, you said Brock Purdy was bad on Twitter, but this week he got me 30 points on fantasy football. What caused you to be so wrong about him?
I was never wrong about him. I'm just gonna leave it there. No, first of all, he played like the best game I've ever seen him play, and I've seen like a lot of his games because when you hate something and a bunch of people disagree with you, you feel like you need like backup, so you're gonna like watch more games. So I watched like a lot of Brock Purdy games, and
he was useful.
He played incredible. He played incredible, which means it's an outlier and it's a fluke, so it doesn't count.
That's where you're going with this?
It's variance. Some players play lights out. Everyone remembers the T-Jack game against Arizona. These things happen.
Is this like Mitch Trubisky discovering how to throw left?
He did do that for Pittsburgh for a brief moment. That was pretty crazy.
Borderline remarkable. For Kyle Slaby's, or rather, Kyle Slaby asks, for Arif's pillow corner.
What?
We're going off the rails here. My wife's body pillow has been edging on my half of our king bed.
It's been what?
My wife's body pillow has been edging on my half of our king bed.
Strange verb to use there, Slaby, but okay.
But before you ask, it's not a character body pillow. It's just a light blue color. Should I order my own body pillow to help push back her pillow and reestablish my border? What other options can I pursue? If I do need a body pillow, do you have any recommendations on brands or styles you prefer? And what characters should I get for said body pillow?
So the first half of the question is just like, it has nothing to do with like characters on the body pillow. But if I got one, obviously.
Yeah, but then why would you not? Like, she's got a light blue one. I have to assert dominance. Let's get Rambo in here. Like, what are we doing?
So, in my experience, especially over the last week, I would say aggressive border policing has a mixed history. I would open negotiations with your wife about this border dispute that you two are having and resolve it amicably.
Just the queen famously survived the Blitz, James. Why is this? I have questions to read. We still have questions left. I can't.
I'm not in charge of where you put the questions.
This is not. Oh, God. Nolan Kaler asks, I think, Happy Thanksgiving from North Code.
Canadian Thanksgiving did happen this weekend, by the way, everybody.
Yes. Anything Arif and James recommend to add some Canadian flair to our holiday of superior gratitude?
Superior gratitude. First of all, most of Lake Superior is on the American side of the border. Second, I imagine, so I have a number of Canadian friends and they shared their Thanksgiving plates and they looked just like real Thanksgiving plates, which is stunning because not only is it fake Thanksgiving, it's a fake country. But I would say that the way to make it more Canadian and in your eyes somehow that makes it better, not sure, don't follow the logic, but in order to kind of match that, instead of boiling potatoes and then mashing them, mixing them with milk and all that, you cut the potatoes into strips and then fry them, maybe twice, one at a lower temperature, one at a higher temperature. And then you smother those in gravy instead of the mashed potatoes.
Do those things go together?
In Canada, yeah, especially if you add like cheese curds.
Oh,
to them.
that could add something special to that.
Yeah, and that would make it kind of unique to the
Uh-huh.
region for sure. That's certainly something that I think would give it a little bit of Canadian flair.
That would be something. I wonder if you could get that like at a number of different locations and they'd have their own like spin on it. That'd be my ideal
Yeah.
situation. Like if I'm having something like this and I've got a real craving for it, maybe I also want sushi. And so I stop off at the sushi place. Maybe I can also get something like this there too.
Yeah, just anything that's like specific to the type of cuisine your restaurant is serving. But the I don't know what to call it. Thanksgiving strip potatoes.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you're cutting the
seems-
potatoes into strips. Yeah. So whatever, like the sushi version of that, or a Thai version of that, or a Greek version of that with like feta cheese.
There's options.
Yeah, I know.
There's there's absolutely options. Don from Ohio asks, "Hey guys, I have some questions about Arif's misfortunes lately. Number one, do we know where Chad Greenway was on the night Arif's car was taken?" It's funny. I did actually look up on Cameo to see if I could get something from Chad Greenway this week, and he does not have an active Cameo account at the moment.
Oh, that's too bad.
Number two, does Arif own a fanny pack? It's the best way to carry those USB-C cords. I feel like fanny pack is... Let me check the Threadless store.
Do we have one?
We don't. I just want there to be one. There is not.
Is that an option
currently.
that you can? Okay.
I will message the Threadless people and be like, you know what we need? Need is that word's doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need that. That could be good. Also, number three, with the series of bad luck that Arif has had, does he finally realize this is karma for causing so much harm to my relationship with my wife? Making me lie to her, getting her exercise equipment, and telling her she's not royalty seems to have really come back to haunt you.
Okay, first of all I said was that buying a square foot of Scottish land did not entitle you to Scottish titles. Whatever royalty means in your relationship, you can just call her that. That's fine. That, like, you don't have to buy into a scammer's lie. That's its own thing. Also, I never made you lie to your wife. You just chose to do that. That's I don't have responsibility for decisions that you make. Also, I never got her exercise equipment, so I don't know what that's about. Like the way that sentence is phrased, it made it seem like I got her exercise. I didn't.
No, you it may have been suggested, but that was not something you did.
Right. So none of those things happened, which means that I don't bear any karmic burden from it.
Wow. Strong statement.
My bad luck has something to do with an entirely different set of things. Maybe the universe hates me.
I just think that you should get. I feel like you should just throw that cursed amulet back into that volcano.
The amulet told me things will turn around.
No, that amulet is lying. What has gone right since that amulet came into your possession?
Technically, nothing it has said has been wrong.
They said things would be interesting. This is not good. Also, how upset are we as Vikings fans that Jefferson injured himself while slipping on a Luke Braun mask that was on the field?
So I wonder if actually it wasn't a Luke Braun mask, but Luke Braun himself, because while I had told the football party that I wouldn't be there that morning, so my absence was excused, Luke's was not. So I wonder where he was the night before. Maybe on the Vikings field. Maybe Justin Jefferson stepped on his face. Who's to say?
I feel like that would be the positive, though. That Luke Braun's face was stepped on by.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. Sorry, Oh, yeah. So this question asks how mad we are?
Yeah,
I'm mad that he messed up Jefferson's season.
Yeah, clearly. I was going to reach out to him if you were unable to do a review episode. I was going to reach out to Luke and say, hey, Luke, you have an opportunity to do one of the funniest things ever.
seething.
You could do this. You could do the show. You could do the review, and then answer all of the questions in the mailbag as if you were Arif. This could have been...
I am having a lot of trouble right now, James.
I know it's not helping you. I was just trying to... We already went over where my line is, so we're fine. Let's ask a couple of car questions for you for Arif's car corner. Roro asks, what advice can Arif offer Stefan Diggs on navigating the emotional turmoil of having your car stolen? I liked that one. That one was really good. That one was excellent. Chris asks, how do the Vikings' chances of making the playoffs compare to Arif's chances of not having his car stolen?
Okay, so I came across this YouTube video about how easy it is to steal a Hyundai. It posted the day after my Hyundai was stolen.
It was remarkable. It was absolutely remarkable.
It's like, thanks, Wendover. So the odds are not crazy high unless you compare it to like other cars, because the odds of anything getting stolen like a car, even if it's a remarkably easy thing to steal, are just like very low. They just are low. Most cars, even if they're easy to steal, don't get stolen ever at all in their lifetime. Crazy, I know, right? Now, evidently in Milwaukee, the rate at which Hyundais and Kias are stolen is such that if there are no repeats and everyone retains possession of their car throughout the process instead of like selling it or, whatever, right? Evidently the rate at which Kias and Hyundais are stolen at the moment over the past 2 years would suggest that every Kia and a Hyundai in the city of Milwaukee will be stolen in the next 5 years, which is nuts to me. The carjacking rates in Minneapolis have spiked, but not quite that much. But that would suggest over the course of a single year, a 1 in 7 chance of your car getting stolen in Milwaukee. Now, because it's not that rate in Minneapolis, let's say it's about half that. And I think that is probably a little high. Now, mind you, my car got stolen twice, once officially and once unofficially. Strangely, the unofficial theft was by an official entity, the police. So I would say that my car has gotten stolen twice. For the purposes of the statistical exercise, it would be once, because no one counts cop theft as a theft in the statistics. So who knows, right? But
that's a hell of a sentence. Just
if
for
it's
the
half
record.
that, so it's about 1 in 14, right? Which I used to be able to do that math in my head, but great, it's 7%. I knew that. The Vikings' chances of making the playoffs, according to I think ESPN FBI has it. Let me just double check the projections. Yeah, according to ESPN's Football Power Index, which again ranks the Vikings as the 12th best team in the NFL, suggests that their playoff odds climbing out of 1 in 4 are 20%, which is incredible, right? Like this team has to be good for them to be able to get out of a 1 in 4 hole to potentially make the playoffs 1 out of every 5 times. So the Vikings are 3 times more likely to make the playoffs than for a random Hyundai in the city of Minneapolis to be stolen over the course of a single year. My Hyundai does not seem to be a random one. It has already been stolen twice, but statistically once. I would say that should I get this car back, I will figure out a garage-like solution, first of all. This is nuts.
My thought honestly was, when you said that you were going off to fly, that you were parking your car at the airport just so that like it was like under some form of surveillance. So it wouldn't get stolen again while you were gone.
The thing is, like, no other cars on the block have been stolen. Like, I asked the police. I was like, hey, what are the other car thefts? What's the carjacking situation like in the area? And they're like, yeah, yours is the only one. Crazy, huh? And I was like, don't say that.
Don't say that.
Don't do
I
that.
remember when the Pioneer Press used to print the the neighborhood crime rates. Like,
Mhm.
oh, this the Midway had this number of carjackings, this number of whatever, and you could kind of like see trends or whatever. I just imagine that your neighborhood in Minneapolis is just like, yep, this guy is getting it. Just this one
Dude,
guy is getting carjacked. Is having his
have you heard of Spiders Georg?
I have not.
So the statistic that, which is, it turns out it's a fake statistic, but the statistic that like on average, humans eat like 7 spiders a year or whatever.
Oh, that, yeah, I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, so it turns out like that's not true. But like the idea is that like, yeah, they just crawl into your mouth while you sleep. Isn't that creepy? Think about that forever. It turns out it's not true, by the way. So someone was like, well, but that's just an average. What if there's just an outlier and he just like eats 300,000 spiders because he wants to? And someone's like, the story of Spiders George, but they spelled George wrong, so it's Georg. And yeah, so my car is Spiders Georg. It just gets stolen so many times, it has impacted Minneapolis crime statistics. I think that if I got my car back and did not change how that car like if I just like, parked at the same spot, whatever, right? There's like about a 70% chance that it gets stolen again. Like no way. Like no way does, if I treat it the exact same after 2 thefts. Well, 1 attempted theft and 1 real theft. Statistical theft, I should say. Like no way. Like weeks apart, by the way. Like no way. That car's getting stolen again. So I'd say 70%, which is like 3 times higher than the playoff percentage I just quoted for the Vikings.
I just want to
Spider
point...
Georg the car.
I just like the idea, yeah. I just like the idea that your car is now like one of the dots on a John Boy's documentary. Like one of the outliers that you go, well, what is this doing here? Oh, well, here's the story.
Zoom in, yeah.
Here's the story of Arif Hassan and his Hyundai. Also a question from Damian Barrett. Who is better at holding on to their belongings, the Vikings and footballs or Arif and his car?
I have only lost my car twice, okay? The Vikings have lost the football way more times than that. This is not even close.
So, like,
if you compared it to averages, I guess actually I'm worse.
I like the idea that, well, you'd mentioned about like class action lawsuits and stuff and how the judge rejected the offer because it was way too low.
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the Discord, like I think I should sue. This is crazy because I watched the Wendover video. And I'm like, oh, this is like catastrophic. So I'll link it in the show notes. But like the thing about this is that like there's an anti-theft device that is in 96% of all cars produced since 2015. Unless it's a Kia or Hyundai car, in which case it's only in 23% of the cars produced since 2015. Which, by the way, guess what my car doesn't have? That anti-theft device. And it's like a couple of dollar piece of equipment. It just, all it does is makes sure that the transponder in your key fob is like within range when you attempt to start the car. Like the reason old school hot wirings don't really occur anymore is because there is a device that checks to see if there's a key when you attempt to complete the circuit that starts the spark plug in your car, right? And it just don't have it. It's like 96% of cars. 96. This doesn't have it. And so I'm like, oh, that is like infuriating. And like, we just like didn't know this until like literally like the TikTok that like pointed this out, which thanks, dude, for doing that. You've caused untold millions in damages. Like literally, good job. But the TikTok that pointed this out evidently was released a couple of weeks after I bought my car. So this would not have been in the available information I had to me when I purchased this vehicle. It was not in the top 10 list of most stolen vehicles in the city of Minneapolis. I checked. I did the research. I was a good car buyer, right? I did my work. It did not happen. So I was like, that's like lawsuit worthy. And someone was like, Dusty was like, oh, you're not gonna like this. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And so there are these class action lawsuits, and the link that Dusty provided was was just an argument that Kia and Hyundai were putting forth that to the judge that, hey, you should just throw out this lawsuit. The article did not indicate that the judge was particularly amenable to this, so I'm not that worried. That's just like a normal, like, we're awful corporations and we don't want to like be liable for these cars. So they submitted a settlement to the class action lawsuit, right, of a lot of money, right? And per car, actually, it would not have been an awful pay. It wouldn't have been a great one, right? I've had to pay a lot of money in repairs just for the stolen vehicle, much less what if I don't have the vehicle, right? But it wouldn't have been awful, but it wouldn't have been great. And the judge was rejecting it because the nature of the settlement is such that like it recognizes that they're at fault. So if the people suing decide not to accept the settlement, then you'll contest whether or not somebody's at fault, right? So the judge is like, well, in the case of where you're at fault or whatever, this is like nowhere near high enough, and like it does delay the payout by several months, but like, thank you, like thank you. Let's figure this out. Let's put them to the wall. I don't care, man. Let's figure this out.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. I feel like some healing was done today. Arif, what do you have to plug?
So I've got a recap of the Vikings Chiefs game. I talked about a couple of things. I don't talk that much about the Justin Jefferson injury because we didn't know much at the time, but I talk about like the defense, some of the stuff we discussed here, some of the stuff we didn't discuss here in the recap. And then I posted my first like truly political post. Like I did touch on social issues and a couple of other posts, like the AIS sports writing article and the Jim Trotter suing the NFL. I've got those two going. But it's like really independently political post. It's a piece on the way that we talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict and the way that the discourse has been framed, given kind of the material realities that we're dealing with. It's not like an attempt to excuse what Hamas did, nor an attempt to excuse what Israel does, but a conversation about what we perceive as violence. And so that's up. And then I've got a piece kind of going over all of the media reactions. So that hasn't been finished yet. That'll be going up tomorrow morning. All the media reactions to the Justin Jefferson news. So that'll be going up soon. So if you don't want my thoughts on the nature of violence, the nature of public discussions and discourse, the incredibly simple and easy to solve issue of the Israel-Palestine conflict, if you don't want those thoughts, there's football. You can read those thoughts. So
yeah, plenty of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back later this week with a preview of the Bears game. So for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much. And please remember to just, put that thing in a garage. Just maybe putting that in the garage next time.
It gets me every time. I don't expect the end of the show to be that. And it just like, I don't think about it. And then you say it. And my day is ruined. Luckily, it's midnight, so there's not much of it left. But like every time.
We'll see you later this week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of Pro Football Network, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
Hey, all things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.